Hi and welcome to Let's Talk. My name's Clare at Dundee Carers Centre, and as today is the start of Mental Health Week, I'm joined today by Clare and Sarah, who are counsellors with Dundee Carers Centre, and we're going to talk to you about what the theme is this year is anxiety. Welcome, Clare and Sarah. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
To mark Mental Health Week. So we have been asking for people to send us in some questions over the past few weeks, and we've got a few of them here that I know you guys are quite happy to give some answers to, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So we'll just crack on. So we have got a few here that we've received. So the first question we've got to you both is, what is anxiety?
Not starting off with easy questions, Claire. So anxiety can, at its core, anxiety is an emotion. Anxiety is natural, it's normal. Everyone is going to feel it at some point in their lives, some point more than others, and to varying levels of intensity. So for some people, it's just what helps keep us safe. It's what stops us walking out in front of traffic by accident. It's what keeps us kind of doing what we need to do to keep us safe and well. And then for others, it can really have a huge, massive impact on their day-to-day life. So at its core, it's about worrying about what's going to happen. It's worrying about the future, worrying about things that can be within our control and that are not in our control in the slightest. It's a very physical reaction, so our body will feel it. It will your kind of basic ones are the kind of butterfly, the jitters in the stomach, or it can just constantly just feel like you've been punched in the stomach. It can feel like there's a weight on your chest. Your heart rate will increase. So it's really kind of getting ready to almost kind of fight or flight. Okay. Thinking about sort of kind of back when humans evolved, we were kind of faced with real danger. We were up against bears, etc., and our body can't really tell the difference between that. So it feels like it's a very physical reaction. So the blood will go to our heart. That's why our heart rate will increase. All our blood will go to our kind of hands and our feet, so that it can make them hot or it can make them cold, because we're literally getting ready to fight, or it can absolutely just make us frozen in the spot where we freeze or we bolt from danger.
Okay. So lots of different things there that can make people feel anxious and give them anxiety, isn't it? And a lot of things probably that people just take for granted as a day-to-day thing sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things change as it goes on. So more and more people now are a bit anxious and fearful of like making phone calls because it's not done as often. Of people coming to your door, that doesn't happen as often as it used to. Whereas then it sort of kind of goes to the opposite end of the spectrum, where there might be people that have got health anxiety or phobias that are then kind of really going to have massive impact, and everything in between. So new spaces, what I'm sure we've all into a new environment, we've all felt a bit panicked, a bit worried, a bit nervous, and that comes into the bracket of anxiety as well.
And what tends to happen is anxiety tends to start off with a thought. So what happens is there is a link between thoughts, feelings, and behaviours as a result of having that anxious thought. So it might start off as, okay, I've got to make a phone call to the doctor. I feel worried about phoning the doctor as my thought. My feeling might be then, I'm feeling really panicked. I'm anxious about phoning the doctor. So then my behaviour then might be, okay, I'm just going to avoid phoning the doctor because I feel that panicked and anxious about it. And then what happens is we continue going round in a vicious cycle then. Because rather than feeling better that I've not phoned the doctor, I actually feel much worse, because I know it's important to phone the doctor, but because I was feeling so panicked about doing it, I've avoided, and now I keep going round in that vicious cycle that links my thoughts, feelings and behaviours as a result.
Yeah. And I suppose, can it be treated? Can anxiety be treated at all?
It can, and again, to kind of varying levels. So for some, it's sort of kind of your everyday things of making sure that you're breathing. Very easily, when we're feeling anxious, we will hold our breath. Our body needs us to give it that oxygen. So it can sometimes sound very basic. It can sometimes sound very almost silly to sort of kind of think of just breathe. It's finding a way that works. Some of the things are kind of building them into your day-to-day. So it comes in with what your diet is, what your sleep is, exercise, relationships that you've got, connections with people. We're social humans. That's what we're built for. So we need those connections in varying levels. So if we've got these things built into our day-to-day of hobbies that we like to do, trying to sort of manage those stresses that we have. So the more we've kind of got built into our day-to-day is a good indicator that if we then feel anxious, it's not going to escalate too much and it's not going to have too much of a negative impact on us. It then can go to things that we do in response to when we're feeling anxious. So we might then do, we might go to the GP, it could be medication, it could be therapy, it could be counselling, it might be escalated to kind of psychology or psychiatry. Or there's, and a lot of GP surgeries is now they've got kind of peer support, and they've got social prescribers, because we know that going out and doing things, having those hobbies are really beneficial for our mental health, as well as speaking with people that have also kind of went through that anxiety or know what that's like, which is where peer support is such a good strategy, a good resource for it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, and it's not about bursting anybody's bubble, but there's a difference between treating anxiety and curing anxiety. So anxiety can't be absolutely 100% cured. There's no magical fix, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach. So what works for someone and treating their anxiety might be totally different for someone else. Some people might find one thing that really works for them, and that helps them manage day to day. For other people, it might be a combination of the things that Claire said. You might take some medication to reduce that anxiety, but then you might still have to work further by doing exercise or diet, again, as Claire mentioned. So it's really important to identify what works for you, drawing on the things that you like, drawing on the people around you, and being open and talking about it, because what works for you might be very different for someone else. And what works for you tomorrow might actually be different the next day as well. So anxiety doesn't discriminate. There'll be days that you have to work harder than others, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a happy and fulfilled life. There'll just be some days where you need to be better prepared or have some time out and just work as best as you can to manage it from day to day.
It's got a bit of a balance, isn't it, with different things going on?
Absolutely. And as Sarah said, it's not something that can be cured. Anxiety is always going to exist. It's a natural, perfectly healthy human emotion. We can sometimes feel like it's the enemy. It's not always our best friend. And bless, anxiety thinks it's doing a good job. It thinks it's trying to keep us safe from these scary situations of phone calls or new environments. And sometimes it is having those conversations with others that help us realise that actually we still have some control. And that part of our brain, that anxious part of our brain that's telling us that, no, if you do that, it's dangerous, something bad might happen. It's doing its best, but it's actually making it worse. So, and it will be different for everyone at what point they need different levels of intervention. So for really kind of when to get help is then when you feel like it's having a detrimental impact on your day-to-day, and those kind of everyday things that you would usually do, that you're kind of no longer enjoying, you no longer feel you're able to do, can be that kind of step to get help. And that step to help can just be speaking to someone you trust, going to your GP, seeking help from other kind of charities or organisations, or looking at online and finding out more information as well.
Good, great. So I suppose this could be a huge effect on people's lives, daily lives, anxiety.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, so it impacts everybody in completely different ways. The way you will experience it will be different. Maybe the similarities will come from the symptoms that you have or some of the thoughts that you even have, but the way that you interpret it, make sense of it, will be completely different. So in terms of it impacting everyday life, sometimes having anxiety can actually be a bit of a healthy response. So for example, if you're about to go for a job interview, or you have an exam at school, or you're performing in a sports competition, it's very highly likely at some point in your life you've experienced a bit of anxiety. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, because the likelihood is, if I'm feeling anxious about one of these daily events, I'm very likely to prepare for that job interview, or really study for that exam, or train and practice ahead of the sporting event. And then I'll likely perform better and I'll be more successful. So that anxiety can actually be healthy and a bit of a driving, motivating factor to do better. But when it becomes a problem is when it starts impacting life daily, to the point that it gets unhealthy and I still feel anxious one of these events. But it could be to the extent of it's stopping someone getting out of bed. It's in stopping them from engaging in going to work, social activities. Maybe it's sucking the enjoyment out of things that were previously enjoyable. And then as a result, you're becoming isolated. You don't want to go out the front door, and you're maybe missing out on opportunities to socialise with friends and family. So then that's when it starts becoming a problem, when it changes what you want your day-to-day look like, and you can't achieve the things that you set out to achieve. So that's when it becomes a difference between it's natural and part of everyday life, and it can be even healthy to some extent, to then when it becomes a problem and you're maybe needing a bit of an additional support with that.
Okay, good.
And I say this, it will impact everyone. No one's kind of immune from it, but there are certain kind of groups of people that it can have a higher impact. So we know that carers are more likely to be affected by anxiety. People from minority backgrounds are more likely to suffer from anxiety or be impacted by anxiety. Those with neurodivergence are more likely to deal with anxiety. And a lot of that is due to the sort of kind of systems that are in place as well. And that's how there's so much work that been doing about like social policy and things like that, to obviously make sure that everyone has kind of equal access and equality.
Good, that sounds great. And obviously anxiety can happen to everybody of every age. So how would you explain anxiety to a young carer?
So I think it's quite important to engage in things that make sense to that young person. So by drawing on their likes, hobbies, interests, to explain it in a way that they can identify, rather than it necessarily needing to be about medical terms or being able to say, name that emotion. Because for some young people, they might not know how to articulate what's going on for them. So it could be helpful to draw on cartoons, films, books, things that make sense to them. So an example of that might be drawn on Harry Potter, for example. There's a dark figure in that that's called a Dementor, and that's how I would personally describe my anxiety to someone else. And the purpose of the Dementor is it's a dark figure that can creep up at any point and it's hanging in the background. But what it's got the ability to do is to take you by surprise, and it feels like it can be sucking the life out of you and almost feeling like you can't breathe and that you might never feel happy again. And that's quite a scary image to think about, but it can be helpful to show someone that image as a way of explaining, okay, look what happened to Harry in that film or in the book. And a way of overcoming then that anxiety is to think about what Harry Potter does in the film. He draws on a spell, which is called the Patronus charm. But if we talk about it in mental health terms, he's drawing on his cultural resources, which is his support plan. So he has to draw on all these positive feelings and have a support plan to be able to do that. Now, that's something that can take a little bit of practice. But the way that he then does that is he thinks about his family, his friends, he plays a sport, he has animals that are all really important to him. And these are the things that help him get through it. And then he also has a bit of chocolate to help him feel better as well. So it can be important to make sense of it in a way that young carers will understand. And that's just one example of that.
But that makes total sense, isn't it? You're bringing all the good things that people enjoy, all the positive things in their life together to try and outweigh that negative thing that's hanging about there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, zoning on things that people feel comfortable with or quite relate to. I suppose it's the best coping way to deal with things like that, isn't it? The negative thoughts that could be hanging about as well. So it does all make sense, really. But it's Absolutely. Good to know. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. And thinking of for young kids, it's about those sort of kind of core emotions. And if you think of like the Disney movie Inside Out, you've got your happy, you've got your sadness, you've got your joy, your sadness, your fear, disgust, and your anger. So that's the same for all of us. There are kind of same emotions. And as they kind of go out and out, they change into different ways. So it's important as well to give young people and give young carers that language of what that means, what that looks like. So what is sadness to them, what is happiness to them, for them to be able to make sense of that we can. It's very easy for us as adults to try and give that a name, and sort of kind of say, oh, this is what you're feeling. But if they then don't know what that looks like, so it might then be giving them an explanation of anxiety in a way that they can relate to, that they can understand, so that they know what that word and that emotion means.
Yeah.
The kids will pick up on the words that we use, but not fully know what they are. And that, to be fair, sometimes that applies to adults as well, where we can be so out of touch with our emotions that we don't always necessarily know what we're kind of thinking or feeling. So using it in a way, and that's a great movie for those sort of kind of core emotions. And Sarah's gave a great example of how to turn something into a way for somebody to understand it that works for them.
Yeah. And talking to people about it, isn't it? Trying to make sense with somebody else is a great help as well.
Absolutely.
And how would you help somebody, like, how would people talk to some of their family or friends about how they're feeling, about their anxiety? What would you suggest?
It can be very, very hard to do, but there are very few cases or instances where we then regret having those conversations. It's that kind of cliche phrase of a problem shared is a problem halved is absolutely true, but it's important to speak to people that deserve to hear what you're thinking or feeling, that not everybody is going to react in a way that is helpful. So it wouldn't just be a case of kind of speaking to anyone at the bus stop or anything like that, that to have that space is important, to know that somebody isn't going to then judge you back for it, that isn't going to then think any less of you, because that's not the issue of you, that's not the issue of your anxiety. If somebody is going to hold having a natural, normal emotion against you. So finding people that you're comfortable with speaking, that you feel will support you, and to be able just to be honest and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And they can usually be really supportive around that. And it's finding out who in your life those people are. And yeah, quite often they'll be able to say that they felt something similar, or that they might feel the same. In that way, obviously, as I said, we can experience them differently, but we have that kind of common thread.
Yeah, and absolutely, it's about breaking down that stigma. And as Claire said, there could be lots of people that are feeling very similar to you, but are too scared to be that person first, to put themselves out there and be vulnerable to someone else. And by you being that person that says, this is how I'm feeling, you might then open up a safe space for other people to talk about how they're feeling as well. So something that could be important to have a think about is to plan ahead before having that conversation with someone. So as Claire said, it's important to have maybe someone you trust, that you feel comfortable speaking to, but it could also be important to have a think about the environment in which you speak in. So somewhere that maybe makes you feel safe, comfortable, having a think ahead what you're maybe going to say to that person. So it might be helpful to jot down some thoughts and feelings, just to have a clear idea of what you want to achieve from the conversation and what you might want to get out of it. And then lastly, actually giving yourself a bit of a reward, have something planned for after that conversation, because it can be a difficult thing. So reward yourself, do something nice, and make sure you're surrounded by things and people that you want to be after a difficult conversation like that.
Okay. And usually the first time is the hardest. Usually once you sort of kind of then get in the pattern of it, particularly with friends and family, it can then be more of a everyday conversation of just that this is what's going on. And there doesn't need to be a big follow-up about it. It can just be, this is what I'm thinking or feeling. I'm sure we've all at some point just wanted to get it off our chest, and we're wanting to be quizzed about it. We don't want the other person to do anything about it. We're literally just wanting to go, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, and then we all carry on about our day. So as Sarah said, to know what you're wanting to get from that conversation and make that known to that person, of that I don't need you to say anything back, I don't need you to fix it, I don't need to do X, Y, or Z, just to be able to say, this is what I need, I just need to get it off, or to have it written down. As Sarah said, take notes, or it can be like you've almost kind of written a letter that you could either give to someone, or just that might be enough. And that can work if you're then going to speak to a professional about it as well, speaking with your GP, taking notes and things like that as well, because it can be nerve-wracking when you're in that situation.
I think that both you're saying is getting it all out your head, isn't it? So it could just feel like a big build-up of everything that's going on, but just getting it all out there, like you say, to somebody else or on a bit of paper, is just that weight off your shoulders that can make you think, okay, I'm ready to kind of go on with something else now. It gives you that next step, I suppose.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that can help kind of break that cycle that Sarah spoke about your thoughts, feelings, and behaviours. That having that kind of interrupted by speaking about it, by getting it off your chest, there's something that is really real about it getting out of your body, in whichever way that might work for people.
Good. So the final question we've got to finalise this bit is how can people support their loved ones, their friends, their family who they feel might have some anxiety?
So I would say one of the first things to consider is actually speaking to someone when they are actually well and they're not in the midst of experiencing anxiety or a panic attack. So it can be helpful when someone is feeling in a place where they're comfortable to speak to it. They've had that chance to come from up here down a little bit and feeling safe enough to talk, to actually get a support plan in place. So having a think about, okay, what can I do to support you? What helps you when you're feeling anxious? What are maybe the signs and symptoms that you notice when you're experiencing it? So I may be aware of it and can help identify that in you. And then coming up with a bit of a safety plan. So, okay, what are the things I can do and say? What would be unhelpful for me? So actually asking the person what they want out of that support plan. So that is a really important conversation to have. But ultimately, it's about being patient, kind and understanding, and actually demonstrating that empathy. Because a lot of people often think that anxiety is just worrying. Oh, you're just worrying, it will pass. So it's not about saying don't do this or do this. It's about, can you try this instead, or can you actually ask the person what they might want? So one particular suggestion I would have is creating like a little anxiety first aid bag and actually doing that task together with like your family, friend or loved one. So it could be a good opportunity to engage the five senses. So things that are maybe visually helpful for someone experiencing anxiety, that could be pictures of family and friends, for example. In terms of touch, it might be a fluffy blanket, really cozy jammies or slippers. In terms of sound, it might be having something that makes a noise, or it could be writing down your favourite songs or podcasts that are maybe important to then put on to listen to. And then in terms of smell, it might be things like scented candles, bubble bath, things like that. And then lastly, in terms of taste, it might be sweets, it might be chocolate, but just all things that help to engage the senses, but equally things that you enjoy and you like, that someone can pull out and help you to come through the other side of anxiety or a panic attack to help relax afterwards as well.
And I think it's important to know that it's not anyone's job to fix it. That again, it's a natural, normal emotion, that we wouldn't try and take someone's joy away from them. So we're not going to try and take someone's anxiety. We can help them through it, we can support them, but people don't need to be fixed because they're feeling anxiety. That again, it's that kind of cliche phrase of it's okay to not be okay, that we're the person that somebody chooses to speak to about, that it can sometimes feel, oh gosh, like I need to do something about it, I need to make it better. But actually that can make it worse, because we try and kind of say, don't worry. And let's be honest, if somebody says to you to not worry, it doesn't help. It's the same when somebody says don't cry. It doesn't stop us crying. No. If only it did. So it's just finding someone that can be there, that can support us through that, of just to be there, as Sarah said, to then kind of bring out, right, okay, let's bring out the box, let's bring out the bag of things that are going to be helpful. Is there a good movie that we can put on? Is there something that we can do? That it's not your job as a friend or a family in particular to fix that person. Mm-hmm. And they don't need to be fixed, they just need to be supported and to feel that difficult, messy emotion. And if we try and stop ourselves feeling anxious, we're inadvertently going to stop ourselves feeling all the nicer emotions, that feelings aren't good or bad. Mm-hmm. They all exist, they're all trying to tell us something. And that's where it can then be speaking through, can help figure out, right, okay, actually, what is the purpose of that? What is that trying to tell me? Yeah. And as Sarah said, it can help us put the effort in, it can help us put steps into sort of kind of getting that job or passing that exam, or it can kind of go the opposite way as well.
Yeah, and just ultimately, as Claire said, it's largely about being present, and sometimes there's nothing you can actually say, there's nothing you can actually do. Sometimes it's about riding the storm out and waiting for it to pass, and it might be really scary to see someone feeling that distressed or feeling that upset, but sometimes that emotion needs to come out before intervention can be put in. So just be present, be reassuring, and stay calm as much as possible. And if we try to avoid anxiety or squash it down, then 9 times out of 10 it's going to come back and rear its ugly head even bigger. So it's about how we respond to it in the moment can be really important for then moving forward with it again.
Absolutely. And to know, I keep that kind of non-judgmental attitude where even if Sarah and I have went through the exact same thing, our reactions are going to be different. So neither of us could say to the other, oh, I know exactly how you're feeling. You don't, but you might know you might be able to relate to that. You might be able to kind of draw on that, but to not judge of that. To some people, getting on a bus is absolutely not an issue. For other people, it's a really anxious experience. So it's not to sort of kind of put that down for them feeling like that, because they'll be able to do things and find things okay to do that you might find anxious and anxiety provoking. So it's about pulling on that of that you might not fully understand the logic that's in that brain, that the anxiety telling them, but you can still be there and just sort of kind of go, well, that's tough, that's hard.
Yeah. And that's it. Everybody's different. That's what we've got to remember. Not every mind thinks the same. Not every mind acts the same. There's not one fix for all. No, I mean, everything's different. So it's being mindful of that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And as Sarah said, the strategies that we'll use are different for everyone. So what will work for Sarah might not work for me, and vice versa.
Good. Well, thank you for answering the questions we received in. That was really, really helpful. Thank you very much. And I know that we hold a bunch of resources, different skills that people can tap into to use, which are available on our web pages. And all these details will be below in the comment section. So please, if you're watching, please visit the pages and you'll find out lots more there. If you do need any more information about what we've talked about today, please get in touch with us at the centre, and we could put your questions or anything over to Sarah and Claire, who would be happy to get back to you in regards to any questions you may have.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Sarah and Claire. And just to finish off, as we are we're marking Mental Health Week this week, what does the centre have planned for the rest of the week?
So tomorrow we have, on the Tuesday, in case you're not watching this on Monday, we are having an event at the centre where we're going to have sort of kind of different stalls and resources that can be helpful. So there'll be some outside organisations, and there'll be representatives from some of the different areas of the centre as well. Sort of kind of give that option. Although we are sort of kind of doing this, we're not the only aspect of the service that can be helpful for people with anxiety. So they'll be there as well. We have asked some of our student counsellors and some of the other staff as well to share their tips and tricks. So one of the kind of biggest things we always get asked is about strategy. So rather than us sitting talking for hours on end, the staff have all kind of got involved. Some volunteers have got involved as well for what helps them when they're feeling anxious. Again, just to give more of that variety. If Sarah and I were to give it, it would be very based on what we've seen, what we've experienced, and what personally works for us. So we've cast that out to more people. So they'll be sort of kind of popping up on social media throughout the week as well. So there'll be a little bit of something every day that will sort of kind of fit in with this year's theme of anxiety.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity that it's not necessarily things that might work for you, but you might think within your caring role, oh, that will be really helpful for the person of support or a loved one that you have as well. So in terms of the open day on the Tuesday, it's an opportunity to bring family and friends with you as well, because there will be information and stalls there as well, not just for carers, but also for the people you support as well. So bring as many people along with you as you like. And again, as Claire said, it's an opportunity to see what staff do as well. We have to practice what we preach, and it just shows the variety of resources that are out there and how people need to do different things at different times in their life, depending on what their experience and how hard you need to work at your mental health and how important it is. And
yeah, it's very important.
Being kind to you.
Definitely. Well, thank you again. All the best with everything you've got on this week.